Welcome back to our channel, Sjctnc.T.Miranda.in. I am Dr. T. Miranda Lakshmi. I am working as an assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science and AI, St.Joseph College, Cuddalore. So, in the last video, we discussed about what is by authentication and what are the different types of authentication. We saw the authentication in centralized environment, authentication in distributed environment. Authentication in centralized environment is about password, then artifacts and human characteristics. And distributed environment is about what is by link-to-link encryption and what is by end-to-end encryption. Now, in this video, we are going to discuss about the authentication in distributed environment, how that authentication is being done. What is by key distribution method? In distributed environment, we'll be using an important thing that is called as cryptographic keys. What are the keys available? We are having two types of keys. One is permanent key, the other one is session key. A permanent key is predetermined whenever two parties is going to communicate. For example, I am going to communicate with the other person. When I am going to communicate with X with Y, whenever there is a communication, we will be deciding upon a key, and through that key only we will be communicating. This is permanent key. Permanently, whenever I am going to talk X with Y, that key will be used. If I am going to talk X with Z, another key will be used. That is, another one permanent key will be used for talking with Z. In this approach, it is high risk because if anyone is going to disclose the key, then all the information will be accessed by the unauthorized user. The next key is session key. Session key, it is an unique key whenever the session is started. For example, session means the first session, the first class is being started. If I am going to communicate with the other one person, the first session. In this session, both the parties will be deciding upon the keys and they will be communicating. After that session, the key will be expired. Again, when I am going to start a session, again I have to decide upon a key. So in this, when compared to your permanent key, we'll be having only limited damage, because if a key is being disclosed, only that part information will be disclosed to the unauthorized person. But in the permanent key, all the information will be disclosed. So that is the difference between permanent key and session key. The next one is authentication server. There are two types of server. One is authentication server. The other one is distributed server. First, you can see what is the role of authentication server. If you're going to take the authentication server, it identifies whether you are an valid user or not. You are an authorized user or not. If two parties want to communicate. So, as I said earlier, in distributed server, we'll be having a server and a client. So, if two parties is going to communicate, the authentication server, it will be requesting the two parties X and Y. It will be requesting to the authentication server whether we can communicate or not. The authentication server checks for the permission, whether both the parties are authorized person or not. After that only, the communication channel will be enabled. So it is the main role is security is maintained in this authentication server. The next server is distributed server. After identifying both the user or valid user or not, now what is the work of the distributed server is, it is responsible to generate keys. Already we saw what is my key. We saw about two keys. One is permanent key, the other one is session key. The work of distributed server is it will be distributing the keys to both the parties, that is X and Y, over the network. From this stage onwards, the authentication server, first it approves and then it goes to the distributed server. The distributed server distributes a key. From this stage, both X and Y starts to communicate. So this is the workflow. So X requests the permission. So X applies to the authentication server for the permission to communicate with party Y. Now authentication server checks for the permission, whether X and Y are authorized person or not. Authentication requests the key to the distributed server. Now what happens is, after checking for authorization, authentication server requests the distributed server to generate key. The distributed server generates a key and it gives it to both X and Y. Now X and Y starts communicating. After receiving the keys, they will be starting communication. So this is the workflow of authentication server and distributed server. So here we are having a key exchange, that is X and Y receives the session key, and or you can have the permanent key, and that if it is a session key will be used here, or a permanent key will be used in order to exchange the information, and the information will be very confidential and the integrity will be maintained. What are the key takeaways? So two keys we saw. One is permanent key, the other one is session key. Permanent key, whenever X and Y wants to communicate, it will be permanently maintained. Session key, for each session, the key will be decided and they will be communicating. We have seen the role of authentication server and distributed server. So there is a secure communication between the two parties. So this is how the key distribution method works. Thank you.